You're listening to the Geek Watch Podcast, Episodes 8, with your host, Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie. Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to Episode 8 of the Geek Watch Podcast. My name is Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Mandy. So, you have just come...
Absolutely, literally, not figuratively, the actual, term of literally, walked out of the movie theater into my car and drove over here from The Last Jedi.
All right, so what did you think?
Well, of course, I loved it, but as always, I love so many things, so it's hard for me to think critically on it. But it has been out for over a week now, so having all the build up, all the arguments and stuff. Like, I went in thinking about these things. I heard, there's porg overload, and there's so many twists and all these things. So I guess going in thinking, oh no, I'm going to be overloaded with porgs. I thought the porgs were fine. I think they were, tastefully done. I don't know what the
if you're Chewbacca, you thought they were tasteful.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Oh, so speaking of which, there are. I think we are going to do spoiler on this one. Okay. I mean, at this point, I think if you haven't seen it by now. Shut this off.
Turn it off.
Yeah, shut off the podcast. Go watch it and then come back. But so now that since the bloom is still on the rose, you're sort of basking in the afterglow. Yes. I'm guessing you enjoyed it.
Oh, of course, yes, absolutely. And it's very rare that I even go see movies. And I think I've seen just as many movies all by myself in the theater. Not by myself in the theater, but I went without any friends or anything, as I have seen movies with friends. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. But I got to watch this by myself, and I laugh very loud. I'm like a human laugh track, and so I sometimes worry about disturbing the people in the movie theater. But when I laugh at things, then I think they realize it's okay to laugh at them. Because I tell you, there were so many just laugh out loud moments right from the beginning, and I'm waiting on General Hux. I'm still waiting. I just loved it. It was that was just great dialogue. Quick, I just loved that.
Oh yeah. Well, unfortunately for Hux, he doesn't shoot first. Because there was that moment where you thought he was going to. Well,
poor Ginger General.
He
just got the crap kicked out of him.
Right.
All through this movie.
Yeah.
If you are a Ginger General fan, just go into this movie expecting that.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, Kevin Pauly and I went to see it about a week ago, and we did a review on it.
Yes, and I avoided it because I knew that I was going to go see it, so I didn't watch your review on it.
Which is interesting because, and this is something that I think I mentioned to you before, we didn't really go into a lot of details about the movie because it's very difficult to talk about this movie, even critically, without really just going into spoilers, because there's just so much in it. And a lot of the reviews I saw online were kind of in the same situation. They're like, it's very difficult to review this because you can say, well, I felt this way and that way, but you can't explain why you felt that way unless you start really going into the plot. And this was a very kind of a thick plot.
There's so much story.
Yes,
someone had told me, there's enough story in this movie to make up its own trilogy, and I could see that. Thinking about in Stranger Things, the Netflix series, there are 3 different stories going on. There's a monster movie, there's a mystery, and then there's a coming-of-age drama. And so it was almost like that. And this one movie had all these storylines, not just one storyline with interconnected characters. There were everyone had their own story going on.
Right.
Yep.
And, one thing I can definitely say, and this was something that I said when on the Real Deal review with Kevin, was one thing I really enjoyed about the new Star Trek was Star
I know.
Wars. Sorry, that's one point.
No, because
one.
I'll bring up something here in a second about the Laura Dern character, and
Right,
yeah,
right.
just
But the one thing that that I thought was interesting, how the story's kind of changing with Star Wars, is that Star Wars traditionally has been a very black and white kind of a movie. The Jedi are good, the Sith are bad. It's very black and white, very good versus evil, and it was really
Lord of the Rings, ugly
very,
people bad, pretty people good.
I mean, it was very obvious whose side you were on. And in the original trilogy, for all of its, all of its shortcomings and all of its fault, it was starting to kind of lean away from that a little bit. Now with this new trilogy, especially with this installment of Star Wars, we're really the differences between good and bad. This whole Sith versus Jedi, we're starting to see some levels of gray. In other words, the storytelling is becoming a little more sophisticated.
Yes.
It's I mean, even the Rebels versus the First Order. You're starting to see this, especially when you're dealing with the arms dealers. And it's like they're selling weapons to both sides of the conflict. So it's like, well...
Yeah, and you see that, and I love that when Rose says, I want to punch a hole through this city, and she gets to, and that was fantastic. And it's so... I don't even know how to describe it, but it's not... like, even when Luke is talking about, to think that the Jedi own the Force... That's arrogant, and that was ultimately their downfall, is that they're the only ones in the universe, and that they know better than everyone else. So I guess it is about balance, I suppose. That could be...
Well, there's a YouTube channel called Charisma on Command, and it's basically a channel teaching people about charisma and confidence and things like that. And they did this interesting video, I thought, on why the Jedi are messed up, because of basically three reasons. Things that they teach that they considered were dangerous, and one of them is about fearing your emotions and trying to suppress them, and how that can be very problematic.
It's Vulcan.
But the thing about it is when you suppressing emotion, and then it just starts to just pour out in very unpredictable and unproductive and sometimes self-destructive ways. And something else that they talk about is this fear that they develop in the Jedi, not just in if you get caught up in emotion that something terrible can happen, but they also say they continue to teach the Jedi, if you start going down the path to the dark side, there's no coming back. Now, obviously, that's not true. Many people have come back from the dark side. Darth Vader came back from the dark side. And so this feeling that you can't ever screw up ever, because if you start, once you go down that path, you're done. That kind of an attitude is a very dangerous one to deal with. And so I just thought it was kind of interesting. You had this video, I think it was like about a year ago, and you get Luke Skywalker kind of saying the same things. Is that the Force connects all of us, but the Jedi and the Sith both have basically taken this and made it their domain. And certainly when you see the end of the movie, you realize, the Force does connect everybody together, and even a little slave boy.
Who's got that little spark of I guess I've come to start calling them like the Olivers, the Lost Boys,
the Olivers,
the little orphans, and it was so subtle, and I love the subtle stuff, the explosions and everything, but the little subtle things like the fact that Luke doesn't make footprints in the salt.
Right.
Yes, and that you're seeing that, and the broom, just like that.
Yes, he force pulls the broom.
I mean, this kid, that's just part of his job. That's just part of what he does. He doesn't know that it's special, that he's force sensitive, I suppose.
Right.
So now that the novels have, they're their own canon,
Right.
and I only read one, and I enjoyed it. It was, Han Solo had won this planet in a card game, and he kidnapped Princess Leia and took her to the planet, and Luke finds this group of women of Force users, and it was a really interesting a novel, and I enjoyed it. So now we have this whole bigger, expanded universe, and I've got to be honest, if I don't see some BB-8 slot machines, I'll be upset.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I like that. And I forget what the other robot, the First Order's version of BB-8.
Evil BB-8.
Evil
He
BB.
looks kind of like Maximilian from Black Hole.
The Black
right?
Hole, yeah, at least the top part of it.
Right,
definitely.
exactly.
Oh, yeah, he certainly had that. And I'm sure, and of course there's a name for him, and I just don't remember what it is right off the bat. But, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the film. I know some people had some issues. And what's kind of weird about the film is, I mean, normally in a movie, if you look at the reviews, the fans really like it, but maybe the
critics don't.
The critics are split. What was weird about this is that the fans really seem to love this. The critics, I should say, the critics were really glowing about this movie, but it was the fans that seemed to be split, which is kind of weird. Although, of course, I saw this. I thought it was funny. One of the headlines for one of the news sources that was talking about the Last Jedi was, after making $60 million opening weekend, how is Star Wars going to ever recover?
The poor things, poor Lucasfilms, poor Disney.
Poor Disney, yeah, tongue firmly in cheek, saying that. That being said, the truth is, I enjoyed the film. I know a lot of people enjoyed the film. I can see why some people might not, though. And I think the main reason for this, and this was a theme that was going through this movie a lot, is there's been about this movie, there's been a lot of speculation. There's been a lot of fanboy speculation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who is Snoke? Who were Rey's parents? And a bunch of other different things also that come up in this movie, where there's
Snoke was Gollum because he fell through Mount Doom into the other side of the galaxy.
Exactly.
That was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And
well, the thing about it is there was sort of a
that's an Andy Serkis joke for those who are listening.
There you go. But the thing about it is, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily a theme of the movie as much as it was a technique that they continued to use throughout this film. It was all about subverting expectations. In other words, we've had all this time to wonder, who are Rey's parents, to find out
it doesn't matter.
they're nobody.
Mm-hmm.
All this speculation. Who is Snoke really? Well, it doesn't matter. He's dead.
Dead guy in a gold coat.
Yeah, but that's not the only. Those aren't the only two examples. For example, you have Poe Dameron. This whole storyline of Poe Dameron coming up with his own plan to try to save
and over again.
Yeah,
yes.
Try to save everybody, and it turns out, your expectation is the plan's going to succeed, and they're going to be like, we should have listened to you. But no,
nope.
Not only did the plan not succeed, but he was wrong.
Wrong the whole time.
He was wrong the entire time.
And Laura Dern, purple hair woman.
Yes.
I'm sorry, guys, I forget her character's name, but I love Laura Dern. And she's, oh man, she looks amazing in this. She looks alien-y, but also human. And so what I was thinking about her is she totally pulls a William Shatner, a Captain Kirk, getting in the ship and heading right toward the bad guys. I mean, that's something, everything that she was saying, Poe, don't run in head first, think about what you're doing. And she just, man, that was just, love her.
She womaned up pretty heavy.
Yes. Uh-huh.
She was no punk. But, and again, and that's also not the only example. You have the whole thing between Finn and Rose, which is like, there was all this talk that, Finn and Poe maybe. Mm-hmm. People were shipping Finn and Poe, and now it's like Rose goes in. And again, You think Finn's about ready to sacrifice himself to stop the cannon, and Rose is like, nope, you're not doing that. But it's something that was something that was continually being done in the movie. You would set up an expectation. I mean, even the first 2 minutes of the movie, you have Rey handing the lightsaber to Luke, and he looks at it and just tosses it. That moment is like,
that was the laugh out loud moment. And another one, just loving it, confusing so many people. But knowing that it's all going to turn out, and so Yoda. Can we talking about
let's
Yoda?
talk Yoda.
When coming into it late and watching it, hearing about some with my D&D group, they said, okay, the guy who came up, they didn't want to spoil it, so they said the guy who was there with the tree, he was just there as a cheap plot device. I kind of had an idea that it was Yoda, kind of cheap plot device just to move the plot along, or I guess the God in the machine, is that the term?
Deus ex machina.
Yeah,
that means God in the machine.
God in the machine. That the creators are making sure that what needs to happen is supposed to happen, protecting the hero or whatever the
yeah. Well, specifically where the term comes from is in Greek tragedy. What they would do is they would at the end of the play they would literally drop an actor out of the rafters who played Zeus or whatever god, and they would just basically wave their magic wand and everything would be put to rights, basically.
Okay.
And so that's God out of the machine, Deus ex machina. That's where that comes from, and it's considered in modern storytelling to be a faux pas because you want your main characters to solve their own issues.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about the whole thing of destroying the tree is it doesn't really change anything because one, Yoda says that whatever there is for Rey to learn, she's going to be able to learn it. I mean, the books aren't that important.
But
not page turners, they are.
Yeah, and then turns out she stole them.
She took them. So, and it is really interesting because the Jedi library. This is the first time in this universe in any movie you've seen a book.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't even seen a piece of paper in this movie at all.
Wow. Yeah.
This is how. This is how big a deal. But kind of going back to this whole thing about the movie, constantly subverting expectations. One thing as an artist, and I certainly know as a writer, is that the purpose of art is to evoke an emotion. Mm-hmm. That's the job, to evoke emotions out of your audience, your reader, viewer, whoever. It's sort of like the magician doing the working behind the scenes to make the magic trick work, so that you have this feeling of wonder and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But very much like a magic trick, if the audience catches the magician doing the little secret stuff that they're doing, the game is over. And I think that maybe one of the issues with the movie, why some people, a good number of people have had problems with it, is it's pretty obvious that they're kind of yanking the audience around a little bit. It's like constantly, setting you up to think something's going to happen and go, nope, that's not what's going to happen. And I think you can get away with it to some degree, but I think especially like M. Night Shyamalan and his twist endings, when you see the puppet master pulling the strings, the illusion, it breaks the illusion. And I think for some people, just the constant we're just going to do something completely different because we know what you're expecting this, and we're going to completely turn it around. I think some people, even though they might not consciously realize that's, they couldn't say that's what it was bothering them. I think in a real sense, the fact that they subconsciously realized they're being manipulated, I think they kind of had a problem with it. And so I think that may be where some people may be having an issue with the movie. For me, yes, I did kind of see that, but as a storyteller, that didn't bother me too much. Mm-hmm. I mean, I certainly, I maybe would have been a little more subtle about it, to put it kind of in the background where you don't feel as manipulated. Because here's the other thing too, and to kind of Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
About a season ago, people started really kind of getting away from the Walking Dead, and a lot of people who quit watching the show, the reason that they give, almost universally, of why they stopped watching The Walking Dead, was that last episode where Negan shows up and kills somebody, but you don't see who they are. And they're like, and it was that episode or the opening of the next season where, of course, he kills.
You did see who.
Where you saw who he killed and how brutal and violent it was, and people are like, no, I'm not, I'm out. Which is kind of funny when you think about it, because it is a horror series that deals with zombies.
Yeah, and a whole lot of other horrible stuff happened. I think one of our friends talked about well, geez, 3 years ago. Beth and Maggie were all, close to getting raped, and so that's just as scary.
Yeah, it's exactly. It absolutely is. And here's the thing, though. In my opinion, I think that's the excuse that people gives. I think that's the excuse that they give for that it was that was the moment. But I think it started before then, and this was just the culmination. And I think the actual moment in the series where people started having that problem that culminated at the end was that episode when you had Nicholas and Glenn up on the dumpster. They're surrounded by walkers, and Nicholas is pretty mealy-mouthed and weak-willed, and he's like, I can't take it. Puts the gun to his head, pulls the trigger. He falls off, winds up taking Glenn with him, and you have this moment where it looks like Glenn's getting his guts torn out.
Right.
And for 2 episodes, you don't know what happened.
Right.
But then you find out, of course, that Glenn
he's okay. He's
he's okay. But here's the problem with that scene. Who saw it? The audience, and that's it. Did it really affect anybody in the show? No, it didn't. Even though, again, the audience isn't going to, they may not consciously know why that scene bothered them or why it upset them. I think the fact that it was so blatantly obvious that this was meant to manipulate the emotions of the audience.
Wow, yeah.
I think that was the turning point. I think
it wasn't like the revolving door where he was Everybody Hates Chris, that kid, and his leg was busted, and he and Beth escaped and they were in that revolving door, and they were, he was, don't let go, or hold on. I forget exactly what the
right. But you see, here's the thing about it: why that scene works is because this is an interaction between 2 characters, and it affects the other character. See, that's the thing. If you'd have had somebody see this, and they thought Glenn's dead, now that scene kind of works, because the thing about it is, at this point, the audience is just they're just watching it. So it's obviously not pointed to them. They're spectators in the scene. Now they can be emotionally invested in it because they care about Glenn, they care about whoever else. But the minute you do something set up, and it's just for the audience, then it becomes obvious. So it was, at that moment, it was an obvious attempt to manipulate the audience, to basically, sort of like an April Fool's. And the thing is, the payoff was it was an April Fool's joke. You thought, because they waited 2 episodes before they showed him that he was okay. So it was obviously a moment to kind of punch the audience in the gut and make them wonder about what was going on. And I think that was sort of the beginning of the end for a lot of people in watching watching The Walking Dead. And I think in the same situation with Star Wars: The Last Jedi, I think the fact that some of the emotional manipulation and this whole thing about setting up expectations and then just immediately subverting them, it may have been a little too obvious, and it seemed like these were setups to the audience. And again, like I say, if people see you manipulating, see what you're doing to manipulate the emotions of the audience, that becomes melodrama, and I think that becomes an issue. But again, like I said, I enjoyed the movie. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here, because obviously everybody thought Snoke was going to be the big bad villain, and obviously that's not going to be the case.
And I guess, with Snoke's death, for, I guess, hardcore fanboys who study, Star Wars, and they know, like, is it the law of two, or the rule of two with the Sith?
Sith, yes.
With the Sith. So they knew, though, the hardcore fanboys know that that's just a part of Kylo Ren's evolution as a Sith, that he has to kill his master before he becomes, the as powerful, the next master, I guess.
Right. Which I know some people are kind of upset about, because they're some people are thinking that Kylo's really not in a place where he's ready to take that. I mean, he was ruthless enough to kill Snoke, but the truth is he trained enough to be as big a menace as Snoke was. And I can see why some people might have an issue with that, because it's like, is he, I kind of wonder. He doesn't seem menacing enough to me right now. I mean, I'm not as scared of him as I would have been of Snoke.
More like, I guess, walking on eggshells around him. He has intermittent explosive disorder.
Yeah.
That he has these bursts of anger, and we saw that in the first movie. We saw it in this one. Not a whole lot. The same thing. He gets so angry and he destroys things.
Right.
So he's more unpredictable, I guess, than more likely to act on instinct and emotions. Rather than, plotting and planning really devious evil deeds, I suppose.
Well, certainly that type of a character would make you nervous, because he could go off at any moment.
Right.
But there's a certain menace to that type of there's a certain menace that you don't have with that type of character. You just have a hothead. There's a difference between that type of a character and somebody who's cold and calculating and seems to have a master plan, like Snoke probably did.
Like Hannibal Lecter versus, I don't know, the Hulk, I guess.
Yeah.
What would be what's a good explosive?
Somebody who goes off. Well, here's the thing about it is, usually it's not the main villain who is that character. It's usually the hothead who could go off at any moment. It's usually the second tier villain. That's the person you've got to kill to get to the main villain. And which
boss fight.
The boss fight, exactly. Before you get to the boss fight, you've got to get through the hothead.
The mini boss, yeah.
Exactly. So, but still, like I said, I enjoyed the film. I mean, obviously you did, and it'll be interesting to see. What's it going to be, about 2 years? I guess we'll see.
We get Han Solo next year.
We get Han Solo next year.
And that's kind of, I don't know how I'm doing. See, I remember way back when I was in, I guess, college, when Attack of the Clones came out, and they were talking about, this is the Star Wars chick flick. And like, well, okay, and I guess so, but I really like, seeing that even in the First Order and in the Resistance, so many female pilots. It's about time. In the 1970s and 1980s, we pretty much had Leia, and that's all we had to look for. Now we've got all these great, characters like Rose and Billy Lord's character. I don't even know if they ever said her character's name. That to those of you who don't know, Billy Lord is Carrie Fisher's daughter, and in Last Jedi, she was the blonde girl with the buns in her hair. So she got to work with her mom before she passed away. So that was really that made me really happy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So so definitely a thumbs up, and for both of us, I suppose. And of course, it will be interesting to see where the Star Wars universe goes from here, certainly.
Yes.
Especially now that the possibility of Fox being bought out, and so all those Star Wars rights wind up coming back to Disney, and so that's going to allow them to open up a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
We could one day, if we're very lucky, we might get the Star Wars Christmas special remastered.
Oh, how. Ouch. Happy Life Day to everyone.
Yes, happy Life Day.
Fighting the Frizzies at 11, guys.
Yes, indeed. So, I won't take
Chewie's family again.
There you go, Chewie's family. So, I won't take too long on this, but last night I did see the Doctor Who Christmas special twice upon a time.
Wow.
I went there by myself, but I ran into a couple of friends of mine, Sean and Carrie McCracken, which for those of you who might not know, if you go on YouTube, they have a channel. The two of them have a channel called Mysterious West Virginia. It's sort of CSI West Virginia. Basically, they investigate cold cases, West Virginia murders that the murderer was never found, and they go over the cases and they show a lot of the evidence in an attempt to basically kind of to.
Could you put a link in the comments?
I will do that.
Aha.
I will do that. And as a matter of fact, there's one video that I'm one of the voiceovers for.
Oh, very cool. Yes. So if you're listening to this, look down, guys.
Yeah, there you go. If you're on if you're on YouTube, you can the link will probably be in the. I'll go ahead and put that in the comment section, and however else you listen to it, I'll try to put a link in also. Awesome. But it was funny because we were watching it, and I won't go into too many spoilers because I know you haven't. You know, you're still, but it's funny. It's like you're not caught up. But I was talking to them after the showing, and Carrie was like, she said, I really like this character of Bill, which is this female companion who comes back for the Christmas special. He says, I really like her a lot. I can't wait to see to see that season that she's in. It's like, oh, you haven't seen the last episode of Capaldi's Doctor, and he said, "Oh no, we haven't got that far yet. We're still in Colin Baker." I'm like, "What?"
Oh, they started from what?
See, because here's the thing. What I found out was
I know Carrie cosplays William Hartnell, number one.
She does. She Carrie played. See, what they did was there's a Netflix for British television called BritBox. Have you heard of this?
Sounds familiar, but maybe.
Yeah, well, so basically BritBox, they have pretty much all the episodes of Doctor Who.
Wow.
Of the old Doctor Who. So what they've been doing is they started with Hartnell, and they've been going
An Unearthly Child, and going, wow.
Yes, they started from there. So they're right in the middle of the Colin, who's the Sixth Doctor.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's after, Jenny's dad, and, wow.
Peter Davison.
Peter Davison, yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
So they're in the middle, they're kind of in the middle of Colin Baker's, and then, of course, they got Sylvester McCoy to go to. Mm-hmm. Then, after they watched the Doctor Who movie, Paul McGann,
the American movie,
the American movie,
yes.
the Strange American Cousin. Now they're going to be able to start with New Who.
Yeah.
So that's how far back they go.
That's going to be wow. I just think going from that to right into Christopher Eccleston. That's going to be. That's going to be
different. It's going to be different,
Mm-hmm.
and because of course New Who, there's a lot of, obviously not a whole lot of people in rubber suits. So
photons.
Yeah, they figured out what CGI is. So, awesome. But I thought that was interesting. I thought that was funny because it's like I know that you're a little bit behind, but not as far.
Not as far. No.
It's like this was the 12th Doctor, and they're still checking out the 6th Doctor. So. Which I think again. But
I haven't seen all the classic episodes. I've seen some of each Doctor. A little bit of. I've seen mostly of Tom Baker, but a little bit of Hartnell, a little bit of Pertwee, all the way up through McCoy, and I saw the very last episode in 1989 about the cat people and
survival.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes.
And, I will say this. I don't want to go into a whole lot of details about the Christmas special. But I will say that there were a couple of scenes I would have loved to have seen that I didn't get a chance to see. The first one, not that big of a deal, but if you remember the 50th anniversary, you have Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor going back to help the other Doctors save Gallifrey.
Right.
Well...
Yes,
all
when
13.
You just see his eyes, and he says
yes.
13.
But we don't have that scene where that happens. So, so you never have that moment where he does actually. You see the situation where he goes back. Okay. Not that big of a deal. But again, not going into too many spoilers, there was a scene that I really expected to see, and once I saw the setup for the show, I really, really, really expected to see, and didn't get a chance to see. And I think that was, in this situation, I think it was a dropped ball, because I think this would have been wonderful to have seen, which of course was the first Doctor being reunited with Susan.
Oh,
Yes, because he did promise her he'd come back, and that would have been a really wonderful moment to do. That would have been in that episode, because it was really set up that would have been so easy to have done.
Yeah.
And the fact that they didn't was, I have to admit, was a little disappointing to me. But besides, like, it's,
Yeah, you
I know
hear that, BBC?
but it's like, you need to fire Stephen Moffat. What are you going to say, right?
All right.
It's like, yeah, he's out of here. He's gone. He's gone. But I mean, besides, like I said, and I consider those nitpicks, but I really did enjoy. I really did enjoy the send off. It was everything you expected with Christmas. You know, the jokes, you know, the humor, but also the very touching, the heart in it. And they use a little piece of history that I hadn't even thought about until you get toward the end, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know what this is. There was a historical moment that the Doctor is able to use to solve the problem that he finds himself in. And honestly, that's all I want to say about that. I will say that of course, this is you do get to see the regeneration.
I did see that scene.
Yes, with the 13th Doctor.
Yeah.
And I made the comment. I'm like, I'm just waiting to hear. I'm just waiting to hear. It's like somebody somewhere on the internet's going to make the comment. The Doctor was a woman for 5 seconds. Suddenly she can't drive.
Yeah, but they can't say that for the 12 Doctors before her either. But yeah, you're right. I mean, as soon as a woman takes the wheel, it's like, yeah.
So they crash the. But I won't say funny, but it's like, I said that kind of joking, but kind of thinking it was going to happen, because sometimes people on the internet,
There was a meme.
Yeah, it's already a bunch of people.
Oh,
already.
Of course.
It wasn't just one person.
Yep,
it was a ton of people. Hopefully you've worked it out of your system now, guys. So we can go on. We can go on with our lives. Thank you very much. And so I am very much looking forward to Jodie Whittaker taking the reins. And what I will say this, I don't think I really mentioned this before, but it was kind of, when they were revealing who the 13th Doctor was going to be, there was something in me that was just like, please let it be a woman. Please let it be a woman. Please let it be a woman. I mean, I'd heard kind of rumors, but I didn't expect it. But I really, really wanted it. And the reason I did was because I think the strength of the show is basically the variety of the show. It's like you can take the story anywhere. And I think, honestly, anytime you say, well, the Doctor can't be blank. I mean, obviously you don't want the Doctor to be a villain. You don't want the Doctor to be cowardly or selfish or anything like that. But I think that the minute you really start to limit who the Doctor is, you kind of wreck the story. And so to say the Doctor can't be a person of color, that the Doctor can't be a woman, I think that really weakens the character in a way that, for me, isn't worth it. And so I'm really glad to see that we're gonna be able to see what Jodie Whittaker does with this. Oh yeah,
and I think just opening up all so many different stories just now through the eyes of someone. Like we were talking earlier about, I want to see an episode where this Doctor meets Jenny, because seeing her daughter, now that she thought was dead, and then seeing her not now with a maternal eye, and getting to see her come back, I think that could be something really powerful and special.
It'd be interesting to see how that happens. But of course, we're not going to know anything until
a year.
The fall. Well, the fall.
Many.
So I think they are starting to shoot now, but it'll be, again, what's going to be interesting is, when you saw you did see the regeneration scene, and you saw the ring dropping off of her hand, off the Doctor's hand. which is a really nice homage to the first Doctor, because the first Doctor wore a ring, and when he regenerated into the second Doctor, the ring fell off his hand because his hands were smaller. And again, this is sort of that nod to the first Doctor, which is interesting when you think about it, because Peter Capaldi, they call him the 12th Doctor, but he's really the first Doctor of the new regeneration cycle.
Right.
So it's, in a sense, it's first Doctor meets first Doctor. You know. So, but again, now you have this kind of a thread of the Doctor being, you know, I've lived too long. And I mean, that went back to David Tennant. You know, a Time Lord lives too long. And so there's going to be that, I think that's going to be something that's going to be a part of the character until at least the Doctor, in a sense, is able to either deal with it or come up with some sort of, you know, philosophy about it. Is, you know, it's going to be like, you know, when is it enough? And this, again, and this is, of course, to the people who've seen the episode Heaven Sent, you're going to know what I'm talking about. You're not necessarily going to know. But that whole theme of, why can't I lose? Why this once why can't I just lose? Let me just lose this one. And wow, that's all I can.
Okay.
That's all I can say about that. But, and again, I gotta get you caught up on Doctor Who. But that's one of the biggest mind trips of the David Capaldi Doctor, is Heaven Sent. Is this moment where he wants to quit, and you're like, I can see why.
Yeah.
I can see why he wants to quit.
And,
Well, I mean, yeah, this takes that situation and cranks it up to 11.
This one goes up to 11.
It goes up to 11. Well, in this case, 12. But yeah, it is it's one of those episodes that you're just like, oh my, it's relentless, and it's so very well written. But it's also, again, you're just like, oh, it's like, what could be like the worst situation you could find yourself in, and that's pretty much it. And the Doctor has to sacrifice a lot. No snickering out there, you know what I'm talking about. But he has to sacrifice a lot to get out of this situation. That's all I'm going to say. And yes, it's kind of punny for me to say that. But he has to sacrifice a lot to get out of this situation. And so, and I mean, this even goes back to Matt Smith's The Doctor, with the gangers. You remember the creatures that the slave creatures that came out of a vat, and
The Ood?
No.
Okay.
No, these the gangers were creatures that they were slaves, and they could look like humans, and one of them turned into basically the Doctor. So there was like two versions of the Doctor.
Huh. Okay.
This was back in the Rory Amy days, and there was this point where the Ganger Doctor was having issues dealing with the actual Doctor's memories, because there was all these different people running around in his head. This whole thing about, it's like, I have to let them go, and they were all kind of screaming in his head for position. It's like, I got all these voices and they're me, and so, I mean, it goes back to that far, but this whole idea of Time Lords have a regeneration limit for a reason. And one of the curses of the Time War was they lifted that embargo for the soldiers for obvious reasons. You don't want your soldiers dying on the field. You want them to regenerate and go back to fighting.
Right.
And because they lifted that embargo...
Valkyries.
Yeah, they lifted that embargo, and it really started to drive people insane. And so this idea of living... that there has to be an end.
Right.
And this is something that the Doctor is struggling with, because he's getting to a point... Well, now at this point I would say she is getting to the point where she's... is thinking, well, one more life. Is that gonna kill anybody? But after that, there has to be an end to this. You have to get off, as the Doctor put it, the treadmill. of just constantly saving the universe, saving the universe, saving the universe. So, and that's going to be interesting to see how that develops in the new series. So, well, for the last few moments, of course, this is going to be the last. This is going to be the last podcast of the year.
Yep.
We got New
2017.
Year's. 2017, and so New Year's is coming up.
Mm-hmm.
2018's coming up. Do you have any geeky New Year's resolutions? Anything that you want to do?
Well, I do think I want to try to find a convention, a con to go to, because I only do local cons because I fear crowds, I fear strangers, and so maybe step out of my comfort zone and step out and maybe find an out of town con somewhere, and horror, sci-fi, I'm not sure what yet.
Oh yeah, that's I haven't done a convention in a long time. I'd like to do that again, certainly, but it has been a while.
Con?
Well, Shaka Con is a local con.
Yeah, local con.
I've been doing the Shaka Con.
I call it my home con.
Yeah, and I do, and I've gone to a couple of pop cons here in West Virginia, but the biggest convention I went to would have been Rue Morgue's Festival of Fear, which is actually one of like 5 conventions going on in this one area. And it's like 30,000 people in one shot. I don't suggest that you dive into the deep end of the pool there. But there's some
maybe like a Wizard World or something.
Well, there's a bunch of different conventions. And who knows?
I know John Barrowman's going to be somewhere, and if I could meet Sean Patrick Flannery, I would be fine.
Yeah, I think for me,
Jones.
yeah, there you go. I think for me, this for next year, I mean, there's a bunch of things that I want to do, but I think on the geeky side, there've been a few sci-fi novels, some classic sci-fi novels that I've not had a chance to dig into.
Hugo Award winners.
Oh yeah, Delgren. I want to get a chance to read that. I've never read that, and I haven't read the first Dune, and so I think I want to kind of dig into those. I've read a lot of horror fiction this year, a lot of classic novels I've either read for the first time or have revisited, and I think it's time for maybe a little bit of change of pace. I want to kind of dip into the sci-fi side of things, so I want to kind of pick up a few of these novels that are classics, but I haven't really had a chance to really kind of dig into, and I think that's what I'm going to look for in 2018. And so that's for me. So
sounds good.
So the next time we meet, it's going to be
2018.
2018. So
all right. Happy New Year, you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for listening.
Yes. And so until next time, this is for Mandy Patrick. This is Brian Hatcher reminding you that the geek shall inherit the earth. Happy 2017. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.